Oh, yeah.
Blessed and love my lords. Well, Nika, welcome to the show. Red Lion PFP, can you mute, please? Welcome to another Red Lion Meet the Artist with P.E. Sharp, who is a friend of mine. She is a friend of all. She is a philosopher. She is a doctor. She is salacious. She is a frog, of course. And she is an incredible artist. So somebody who is perhaps overqualified for a Red Lion art drop. I would like you to all meet her, and I would like you to welcome back to the stage Red Lion.
Thank you so much for that. Overqualified? I don't think so. I'm an artist like everybody else. I'm out here doing my thing, doing the grind every day, and grateful to be around and to be invited to do things like this. So thank you very much for that. And before we go any further, just take half a second to wish Lori a happy birthday.
Thank you very much. I wasn't going to mention it, but I did mention it to a couple of people this morning. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate doing this on your birthday. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing that you're doing. Thank you.
I couldn't think of anything I would rather be doing, to be honest.
Yeah, happy birthday, mate. Hello, P. Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. I've been in quite a few of your spaces recently and, following the vibe and seeing what you're all about. So it's been really interesting to be in the audience, listening to conversations and feeling like I want to just kind of rush the stage and contribute, So now here I am. I'm on the stage. So
yes, the spotlight is on you now.
And I'm in an ask me anything kind of mood. So we never know where that will take us. It could go anywhere. Just to be clear, I'm not a medical doctor and I don't pretend to be one. I am a doctor of philosophy. So, bring me some ideas and we can figure those out. But if you've got a medical issue, we'll just leave that on the side.
Sorry, that's my bad. I should have put philosopher, doctor of philosophy in there, not a doctor, sorry. But it's still a doctor, right? Like
It is.
You've got a doctorate, so.
Yes. And it's very highly respected in European countries, but not so much in North America. To be a doctor in Europe, if you travel anywhere and people find out that you have a doctorate and, it becomes very loaded, suddenly you're given an incredible amount of respect. And I'm just not even used to that. I don't even call myself a doctor, It's like, I think that maybe once somebody in my life said Dr. Sharp and I was like, what? What'd you just say to me? Well, yeah, it represents a lot of thought that I put into, wrapping up my formulations of a lifetime. But, I'm, as an artist, it's just like the formulation of being a woman artist. I've never once in my life stood in front of anything I was doing at any point and said, I'm a woman artist. I'm an artist. And so, just trying to humbly get through it all.
And so you took the woman out, I took the philosophy out and just called you a doctor. But I think I would suggest that your doctor of philosophy does make you just as, obviously it's a doctor of wisdom, right? Philosophy means the love of wisdom, philo meaning love, and Sophie meaning Sophie.
Don't teach me Greek. Don't teach me Greek.
Yeah, I'm not teaching you. I'm teaching anybody else who isn't Greek. It's etymology for me. It's not, actually etymology is all Greek Red Lion, I'll have you know.
Yeah, just pressing your button. Don't worry.
It's also...
Yeah, actually, maybe me and you should have a chat about that.
It's a really interesting premise for when you dig deep on the work that you're doing as an artist, there are all these tools that artists rely on. And, interestingly enough, I'm a visual artist in what I make, but I'm not a visual artist in the way that I think. I actually don't see images. I have acrasia, which is this thing where you don't see in your mind. I don't have a picture of things. I have words in my mind. And I think that's probably why I fell into using GAN as a tool in my sketch, in my sort of sketch mechanism when I'm trying to formulate new work, because words are something that have such richness for me. And so, yeah, I think that words do matter quite a lot for me, not for everybody.
It's Sorry if I thought Redline was in conversation, but he's muted. It's yeah, I guess the philosophy side really, and like the way that you see the art and the way that you use the tools to make the art, like GAN is quite unique in that you're putting, I mean, you've said to me, I don't use any photos, I just use words. And so obviously photos is not, like you're not trying to feed something in to get a certain response. I see Kane Mayfield was in the audience for a quick sec, but he's popped out, but he uses GAN for some of his art as well. And I know like it's, yeah, the way that you can blend, I think being a doctor in a sense, a different kind of doctor, a doctor of the mind, I would suggest, the way that you can blend your knowledge and the way that you use the words to describe things that, I mean, you've said yourself, you are salacious. I put it in the title of the article for Redline, and I talked to my mum about it, and she was like, "Oh, do you want to do that? Are you sure? Like, is this lady okay with that?" I'm like, "Yeah, these were her words. I'm just a medium at this point. Like, if you've said a word to me, I feel like I can use that word to describe you, but I don't know if other people might look at it and think something else because they don't really understand what the word means. Perhaps it comes from a place of to leap, like a frog. So I love that, and just to jump into something that people aren't prepared to jump into, I guess."
Well, it's my job as an artist to go deep and dark and into a furious state of, expectations that others might not be interested in entering into. I mean, it's important for me to retain being a badass. And I think that so many artists are too willing to give that up in the effort to be branded and to be brandable because, you want to be palatable to a very sort of broad demographic. And I guess I've reached that point. I call them I am going to be salty and I will swear. I call them my I don't give a fuck years because I'm old enough now and experienced enough that I know that ultimately all of this rests on me. It doesn't rest on what someone else perceives of me. I can't govern that. So I'm going to make the work that I need to make. And that's interesting. You also were saying about photography because I worked as a photographer both professionally with commissioned work, but also as a professor and, making my own work and exhibiting my work as a photographer. And even with my photographic works, it was always, I was always trying to bridge that very fine line between something that's immediately graspable and understandable and something that's less tangible and maybe much darker than people expect. So, it's just a really interesting balance that I found has followed through. There's a through line in my life when I look back. One of the advantages of being older is that you do have that ability to look back and see where those through lines are and how there's a continuity even when you don't realize it as you're going through it. So the backward glance was really quite exciting in that way.
This sounds like something geometric to me, like where the shapes intersect and the lines. You can see backwards and forwards a little bit. Like as you're getting later in your life, you can look back at different styles of art and appreciate how you've developed through them, and then you can see the. I don't know. It's crazy to me that we sit in these rooms full of 12 people and we talk about things that are incredible from an art perspective with incredible people. And I think it's important to recognize that you, as the artist in this conversation that we're having, is just as much a part of the art as the picture itself or whatever that the artists are creating at this point in time. It's the story that comes with it that makes it into something special. You're actually front-running my questions because I've done all this researching. I had Dan and I was going to bring that up. I had photography and I was going to bring that up. You brought up photography though, so I wonder if you want to tell us a little bit. I wanted you to refer to your thesis work, your master's work, which I read about online, which is quite incredible. You had people following you around and taking photos at a different time of day or night, I believe.
My surveillance work, yeah. I mean, so just to give a little bit of background on me, I grew up in poverty. I didn't have any kind of understanding of what culture could be other than, my imagination and, very limited during the era in which I was growing up, especially as a young girl. Excuse me. So, I didn't have a whole lot that was open to me. And so when I finally realized what art was and what it could be, and there's a little bit of a narrative there, I knew that it was what I wanted and I didn't know how to get there. So it took me longer than the average person to get there. I was in my 30s when, and I was raising, my own son, who just got married like on Tuesday, when I was raising him, I realized that I had given birth to this creature who was incredibly malleable and easy to appreciate the world through his eyes. And so that was when I realized that if I could do that for him, I could do that for me. And that's when I went to school. So I ended up in photography for a number of reasons. Again, a fairly, long story, so I won't get into the whole thing, but essentially career counseling, was told I should be a computer systems analyst. I said, oh, hell no. And I ended up in this, taking a night class in photography and falling deeply and profoundly in love with it. I mean, evoked all kinds of sensory memory of being in the high school class and, smelling chemistry and all kinds of stuff like that. So that's how I started. And I took this night course, ended up enrolling in art college, which to me was an unattainable dream, It's like I never expected myself to be in that space, in that position of doing that. So with, my son in daycare during the day and having like limited hours, intensely concentrated, photography suited the speed of the ideas that I had held in for so long. And, it was later on when I was doing my master's that somebody said to me, as a photographer, you're an impatient painter. And he couldn't have nailed it more precisely. There was an ability to tell a narrative, to get to the core of something, to walk away from it when I had to and go back to it when I could. All kinds of reasons that it worked out so well for me, as someone who was raising a family at the same time. So I immediately just dedicated my entire life to it, and I never looked back. 25 years of a very successful ride, and in the last 10 years I've switched over to painting, and that has again been a profound change for me. So I'm really grateful to be an artist and to have all of these ways of thinking and perceiving and arriving at different viewpoints of the world that open up to me regularly. I'm endlessly curious. It hasn't stopped, and so it's a great way to live a life, ultimately. So the MFA stuff, I don't know if anybody has any questions, just interrupt. As an ex-academic, I can lecture for hours without stopping. So please, if you haven't...
Okay, I'll take you off on that.
Oh, good.
How did you, first of all, congratulations, seeing your son getting married. I bet it's an amazing feeling, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I wanted to ask you, how did you get started in the NFT space? You mentioned your son getting married. I'm guessing you're a little bit older than us.
I'm staring down 70 in a couple of years. So just, I am. I know, right?
Wow.
So yeah,
that's very admirable, actually. So how did you get into NFTs at your age when probably your peers are not interested in them?
My peers, I have nobody to talk to. Even my peers, even my son. My son's like a creative director. His now wife, my new daughter-in-law, is like an art director. They don't want to know about this stuff. They're on the periphery. They're too busy, right? So I don't have anybody to talk to about this except the people I've met online. So this is how I entered into it. Remember, I was teaching photography at a time when it was going from analog into digital. So I had to take on digital technologies. A lot of people don't know this, but the reason photography became the playground for digital technologies is because the name design shop was already taken. It was already trademarked, so they had to trademark it as Photoshop. That's where it all began. It was always intended to be an editorial tool, And so I was doing commissioned work for magazines and newspapers and publications at that time as well. So I had to learn that stuff, and then I ended up having to teach that stuff in an art college and art university environment. So technology was like this kind of extra vocabulary that I had. More than happy to dump it at the doorstop when I moved into painting. I like to say I moved from digital into tactile. So along comes the pandemic, and I'm incredibly lonely, and the life of a painter is a lonely one anyway. So I needed to hear human voices. I ended up on Clubhouse in early February of 2021. And, there were a number of my friends from Toronto, which is where I am, who are illustrators, and they were talking about sports collecting and, cards and all that kind of stuff. And then a room happened about NFTs. And somebody came into this conversation and said, oh, yeah, there are these new things. So I was the one who jumped over into the conversations, and I was immediately enamored with the philosophy of NFTs. So this is like, as I said, February 2021, first rooms for NFTs that happened there. And the idea of the blockchain as this sort of finite space, but in this ephemeral kind of reality. And myself as a non-fungible token, because I have a limited lifespan, there's all this stuff that I was thinking about philosophically. So that's where I began. And my intention and original...
But you were not interested in crypto before that.
Not at all. I mean, I had friends, who had sent, and somewhere I'm willing to bet you, I've got some crypto somewhere in a wallet, but I have no longer, because I had friends who were artists, like who 5 years prior had said, hey, like Mitchell Chan is in Toronto too. And, there are a number of people that I'm friends with because I was either teaching their friends or my son was their friend because, there was the whole graffiti community thing. So we're talking people who were like underground and into that kind of thing. So I remember people saying, hey, there's this coin, I'm going to send you some, and here you have to sign up for a wallet. So I know that I have some, I just don't know where they are. So, and they could be like, some shit coin that disappeared a year later. Who knows? So it was really, truly the philosophy. And then the discussion started to happen about, we're going to pump this stuff. We're going to do, it became that marketing thing that I was used to in the art world. And that you're going to have to forgive me because I actually brought the word gatekeeper to the discussion. I did it. February 2021, we were in a conversation and, I was talking about, in philosophy, we have these ideas of like gatekeepers and bodyguards. And I was saying, because we have gatekeepers who, and they were like, gatekeeper, wow. And so that became a part of the dialogue. So yeah, it's like, I didn't have an interest in being part of the shilling dynamic.
Yeah, you just like the art and the technology. Yeah.
I'm not even going to say I like the art. I mean, I love lowbrow art. I wish I had that opportunity to be a lowbrow artist. I think it's like amazing. And, the fact that my progeny, my son is actually a creative director, I think points to that kind of aesthetic being, something that always was simmering in our genetic code. So I appreciated that, but there's a lot of really bad art, and that was disturbing to me. But at the same time, it's like everybody has a right to do this. I'm not going to hold back on anybody's creative impulse ever. But the value of the work of art, as opposed to the value of the market value of the work of art, two very different realms, and people were very confused by all of that. So, it was a discussion that I really didn't want to have anymore. The first thing I minted was actually on Hiketnook. I'd already signed up for a foundation and, a couple of other things in March of 2021, but I didn't mint my first NFT until May of 2021, and that was on Hiketnook.
That's really, really cool to hear that. Just a new application of crypto NFTs is drawing people in, and people such as yourself who has zero interest on DeFi and crypto craziness with coins, and just want to be part of a community that values arts and cultures, and you want to create work through that and to be enjoyed by people. And that's the main interest. It's not getting rich or shilling a coin or joining a coin army or whatever, right? It's just pure art and connection with people. And I find that really, really amazing. And it wasn't possible before cryptos became so prevalent, and we are using them. And it's the social dynamic of this was something that nobody expected.
Yes, I agree with you. I don't think that people truly understood how far-reaching this would become and that communities would arise. There was no one single community, which, there was a little bit of that in Clubhouse, like you're either in or you're out. You're part of this community here that's very OpenSea oriented, ETH oriented. It has this kind of dynamic, this intensity, this kind of, and to me, it always felt very centralized and very consumerist and capitalism. So I wasn't interested in repeating that, which I'd already experienced in my IRL art life. I was a dealer for a while, but also curator and an academic, if I say, and I was exhibiting my work internationally. I was very familiar with all of the dynamics. It's like I went through a phase, again, because I've been around for a while, where the last thing an artist wanted was a dealer or an agent or to be connected in any way with commerce. And then it became like, do you have a gallery representing you? It was like this incredible transition that took place. And all of the negative stuff that I perceived in the IRL shift towards market value as opposed to experiential value, all of that was being reflected in the early discussions about, NFTs and what was being done with that. So I also have ideas about the gentrification of OpenSea and how artists were used in a very bad way to
Okay. Let me stop you there. Before you go into that, let's talk. Where have you released work? And like when you started, you said you started with Foundation. Where are you releasing your collections, and what platforms are you using?
I'm using Tezos, Ethereum, and Bitcoin. Those are my three. And I started off, let's say, I released my first one on Hic-et-Nunc, which was Tezos. And then I went to OpenSea because I found a community that was interesting to me that was on OpenSea and the Ethereum blockchain. So, this is what I'm saying. Like, community is really what takes you where you go. It's ultimately not about that other thing. It's about your communities. So Ethereum is a place where I started releasing older work of mine and then stopped doing that because it was about provenance, minting it, lazy minting. But Tezos is where the art community was. And then I found, or rather I should say, Bitcoin found me. A couple of people who knew me very well wanted to bring me on board into the Pepe communities. And so that's where I really and truly found where I wanted to be. And it's remarkable. It's a completely different kind of idea of art and of enjoyment and pleasure. And it's just all kinds of stuff. It just immediately felt like home. So that's where I prefer, although I've just been minting as part of the fake memes thing. I've been minting on ETH for the fake meme community that was really hustling itself a couple of weeks back. So, but I have a job tonight after I finish here to go and settle something out on Bitcoin. Some things that I have to do. So, yeah, it's where I find that my community really does live.
Can you tell us a little bit about, so that's sort of where everything is sitting? Can you tell us a little bit about like your workflow? Obviously, you start with GAN, you add with Procreate, and obviously you've been through photography. I do wonder how long you actually did photography for and how long you've been a painter for, like what parts of your career that is entailed. But yeah, a bit about your workflow and how you get something from started to finish.
Okay. So 25 years solid in photography, lived, ate, breathed, everything. It was my entire life. And I burned myself out. I also had done this body of work called Unanswered Witness, where I had traveled around to all of these very dark places where horrific crimes had taken place. And I'd been doing that for close to a decade. One of the last places I went was Chernobyl. And I couldn't do it anymore. I was tired. It's emotionally exhausting to experience these places in the kind of mindset that I was going for. So that was 2011. I walked away from it completely. I walked away from academia that year. I walked away from directing a gallery. I walked away from everything. I just completely said, can't do this anymore. And I isolated myself and started to paint. So that was a really, wow. I had people come to my studio and say, you can't do this. I'd be like, get the fuck out of here. I'm not going to do what I have to do. So, painting started for me 2011, 2012, and I stayed isolated, became a hermit, and, ended up moving into a different studio space that was far away from downtown. It was just like, it was something I really needed to do. So now my workflow it's absolutely amazing. The fact that I have GAN and that it opened a door for me into having a sketchbook for the first time in my life. Because you remember, I'm not a visual thinker, so I don't organize myself with sketches. It's just not something I do. I do the work. I start and I do the work. But GAN has afforded me the opportunity to do so much more work because the pre-work is in this kind of process of feeding in words and having this surprise. The element of surprise in the work of art is something that other people as an audience receive, but the artist, as myself, I surprise myself, but it's not the same level of, there's not that intake of breath where it's just like, oh my God, I'm glad I did this and it worked. But with GAN, it's like, oh my God, look at that. So I started with GAN a year ago, and it was, again, feeding me information and receiving an image. And that was what I loved. I love the feral aspect of, these generative networks doing this sort of arguing back and forth and giving me something unexpected. So that was exquisite to see things in those initial GAN from a year ago where everything was like collage, and you'd see like an eyeball that was actually made up of a garbage can lid, a shoe, and someone's lunch, right? Because it was so random. That's so, like all of this stuff knit together. And so I loved exploding the view of those things and seeing what was actually being used in that neural discussion between these computing networks to give me this thing. Whereas now it's much more sophisticated. So my approach to GAN has changed as a result. So a year ago, I was happy to sit there with these things and go, wow. And now what I do is I use those initial GAN as something that filters a different kind of way, and I'm making physical work again. So the GAN, which started as like a relief from painting, has now become the introduction to the painting. So, yeah.
A long career, so a long change of processes, and the processes are evolving. So that's natural. Let's talk about Cirque du Pepe, which is the wonderful artwork that you did for the Gazette Art Group. And thank you so much. It's such an honor to have you dropping with us, and it's an absolute pleasure to meet you today. But why don't you go ahead and talk to us a little bit more about the artwork? And it's absolutely beautiful. I love it. It's playful and nice,
but also possibly dark, right? So
I don't know. You tell us about that.
Well, we're going to see where Cirque du Pepe ends up, but I think it's going to be a little bit, it's going to be a little dark as always. So and I purposefully left that dark space behind the main character. So the way this worked out is that, Lori had asked me to do this thing, and I immediately, because, I have this running theme of ringmaster and puppet master and all, and immediately it was like, oh my God. And Lori can testify to this. I was just like, oh, he's going to be the ringmaster. And I went off to my, my GAN stream, and I went da 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 da, and I got this perfect little frog. I mean, looks nothing like what he looks like now in this iteration of, Procreate. But it's like this frog in a ringmaster's suit. And I'm like, and he had this beautiful gesture that you see. And it was just the invocation of that gesture. It wasn't the full thing. So I got to fulfill this magic of this idea of Pepe as this ringmaster with this circus tent behind him that's kind of ominous. It has like the Pepe eyes with the 3 dots in it, looking out from under the awning. The space is dark. There's a sense of foreboding, but also, the circus for some people is a scary place. They don't like clowns. They're afraid of, all of those things. Whereas for me, it's like this absolute pleasurable possibility of something unfolding in front of me that I don't expect. And again, this goes back to my idea of unexpected things. So we have, one Peppa over on one horse who's present and, standing on her horse. Her horse is doing this sort of, rearing up. And then you've got this other character on the other side, a much more benign kind of character with her long white legs. And, it's just like, I just love the physicality of these characters and how you can build on nothing and come up with this thing that you didn't imagine to have. I didn't imagine that coming into existence. It came into existence as a result of, all of the accumulation of ideas that I'm surrounded with, like listening to a space that you were having last week and thinking about conceptual art as a result, and Saul Lewitt and all, it just kind of, everything feeds into what I'm doing as an artist in the moment that I'm making it. So, the idea that there's this ringmaster and his 2 assistants, his lovely assistants, because, then you get into the language of the circus. And the Victory Twins, I call them, in the foreground, that are a reference to a meme in the Pepe domain. So there's just all kinds of things in there that, to me, the Flat Earth Society in the background, where you see like the edge of the circus just kind of ends, and there's sky. And on one side, the sky is flowing in, and on the other side, you just see the edge of the circus land. So I don't know. There's so much in there that I still am appreciating and still is unfolding for me. I imagine that there are going to be some very interesting acts that take place in this circus. Some of them may be rude. I don't know.
Yeah, that was it cracks me up. Some of these acts might be rude. It was influenced as well by the proximity of you to Cirque du Soleil, was it not?
Yes, I mean, when I was talking to you about this, I know Cirque du Soleil, when it was first starting, used to come to Toronto to this flatlands where I am down by the lake, because at that point it hadn't been, built up into condos yet. We're talking about 30 years ago. So they used to bring their traveling show on the road, and they set up like a block away from me on this flatland. And it was a small troupe, maybe 6 people, and they performed every day for free for the people in the community because they were getting their muscle. They were starting to develop and figure out how they were going to do their thing. So it was a real privilege to see that. And I think that in my thing, there's that echo of the beginnings of something, the small tent. It's like big enough for maybe a dozen people to be in there, and with Pepe as the ringmaster this time.
Did you say that I was the ringmaster?
Me? Like you were?
Did you? I think at the start of that you said you were talking to me, and then you just said he was. I think you were probably talking about Pepe, but I thought you meant me, and I thought you meant like. I mean, this is kind of the circus, right? We're in this show together. We're on stage right now with Red Lion. I like the idea of Red Lion doing like a digital circus and creating a metaverse tent and welcoming people into the show, and then you meet the Red Lions as they sit on stage. Like anything might be possible in this future that we're building in.
Lions in the arena.
Yes, and I think there will be lions in there, absolutely. I mean, I worked on the horse's hair to be able to get to the lion's hair. The lion hair, I'm sure, 100% sure, that there will be lions and tigers, and oh my. Right? That's like
just a small correction. There. It's mane, okay?
Oh,
please, not lion's hair. Please, we take that stuff seriously around here.
But for me, as an artist, when I'm working with the tools I have in co-create, it's hair. They don't have a pen that says mane, so you got to figure it out. Like horses have a mane too. Horses don't have hair, but why do they call it horsehair? I don't know. But yes, there's going to be a red lion at some point. You bet. There will.
All right, that's what I want to hear. You mentioned earlier that you're from Toronto. You've met Mitch, which I'm a big fan of his art. Canada has quite an impressive resume of artists, especially crypto artists. Don't you think that you guys kind of dominate the top, the fine art, crypto art genre?
Give us a chance. Yes. we we have those long winters. Like you've got Buckrender over in Vancouver, right? And you've got Mitchell here in Toronto. Alex McLeod, who's like a dark horse, who doesn't really, he doesn't represent in the crypto world, but you know that he's a major influence for digital art across the world. So he's somebody that you can look into as Alex McLeod. And also Lorna Mills, who was one of the initiators of crypto art. I mean, she's been around forever. She does all kinds of glitch work and everything else, completely underrepresented, but people who know. So this is where it becomes, an interesting kind of. Yes, I think it's important that we do look into the history of digital art in Canada because it has been a presence for a very long time, and also animation. I mean, we are where the animation school was set up for Light and Motion, for Disney, for all of these houses of animation that had their roots here in Toronto at Sheridan College. So it's a long-standing history for us. I mean, Marconi did his first testing of the telephone in Newfoundland in Canada. So yes, we do have a long history, and I think it's something that can be embraced further. Marshall McLuhan, of course, local boy.
Yeah, Dimitri also from there.
Yes. That's right.
Death Beef also Canadian.
Ethereum. Like Ethereum was discovered an hour and a half away from downtown Toronto in Waterloo, where the Perimeter Institute is, and there's all kinds of stuff. We do have that history.
Yeah, Vitalik is Canadian, right?
That's right. Ukraine is Canadian.
Yeah. So incredible contribution from Canada, and a lot of artists come from there. Toronto is such a beautiful city. I visited. It's the only city I visited in Canada, and also I went to the Niagara Falls. They were really cool.
Of course.
For sure.
You can't come to Canada and come to this part of Canada and not go to Niagara Falls. It's exquisite. And as a matter of fact, bringing it back to a question Lori was asking earlier, my surveillance MFA, my master's thesis exhibition, there were things in there from Niagara Falls as well, because it's just an epic kind of natural wonder of the world.
Yeah, it's amazing. It was crazy. I really enjoyed my time in Canada. I had a lot of nice interactions with people. Everybody was so nice. And now meeting people from there through crypto art, and I see their beautiful work, and yeah, I'm very impressed. And as I said, I'm a big fan also. Mitch's art, and I'm a holder. Yeah. Now also from you that we have this wonderful art group, so my Canadian collection is growing.
Thank you. And again, I was really honored to be asked. I'm so grateful that Lori asked me, because every opportunity like this affords me the chance to explore something new. I don't tend to repeat myself in the things when it's a new venture. Yes, I do iterations of things, but Cirque du Pepe has its roots right here, right now. And, it's going to grow because to me, it's just this incredible, as I say, it's a playground for me to explore all kinds of things that are going to happen in that tent.
I don't know if anybody has any questions from the audience, guys. You want to join the conversation, just raise your hand and we'll pass on the mic for you. Sorry, Hillary, go ahead.
I was just going to suggest, Pia, you've taken us on quite a mind journey, I guess, walking us through your art and everything. And it is like the photography, the Niagara Falls, the circus, the beauty and the love that is in this sort of French Canadian area of the world, I guess, is quite incredible. And there's I've just shared in the space one of your diary of a seducer artworks, and obviously like you've got lots of things going on, but
So like,
yeah, you've got these lots of other things happening in different collections or whatnot, and like the fake memes that are referenced in the Gazette article as well. Like you've got other projects that you're working on the side, and I wonder if you want to talk a little bit about other things that you might like to highlight.
well, the Diary of a Seducer has a lot of chapters in that particular book, and the image that I see you just posted is actually an orgasm painting. So one of the things I did, this is where the fallaciousness comes in,
I did not know that.
People can look at that and think of it as being a stroke painting, and that's fine. I'm quite happy with that. But in particular, these were explorations of female sexuality and desire and the tracing of an orgasm and the experience in a body. So yes, that's what those paintings are. And that is a physical painting. The one that you posted up there, that's an actual liquid paint.
Does 10 strokes mean actually you did 10 strokes to make that, or?
Did I say 10 strokes?
I think on that one, yeah, it did have it had 10 and then in brackets strokes at the end, I think.
I think it's because it was number 10 in the series. No,
Okay.
they're actually one continuous stroke in the early iterations of that look. They were one continuous stroke. And it was very much about the experience of myself as, I wasn't in my studio masturbating. I was in my studio, sort of being present in the memory of a body that had been young and, the experience of liquid paint and moving that around a surface and understanding the complexity of, what that felt like and the differences between male orgasm and female orgasm. So, the one being very directed towards a goal and the other being directed towards, in a woman's case, being directed towards loss of sense of self in sort of escaping the world. There is no goal in the orgasm.
I wonder if
It is a completion of a pleasure cycle.
I wonder if you are sober when you're doing this, or whether you are drinking or doing anything else. Because obviously, some people will do these sorts of things in quite an unusual state, and some people will do them perfectly sober. It's
I'm actually, pretty much. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I mean, I'm not a temperance person. I just don't. I don't need to do it because I do it in my art, right? I mean, like this is where my sort of threshold for pleasure is in being an artist and in creating this work. And, the side benefits of that are numerous, but no, I don't drink.
only
Oh my God.
because it also
You are
sounds like a very, like,
wasting
sensory.
You're wasting
I
all
also-
this potential for legal weed in Canada. Oh my God. I would kill for that legal weed you have there.
I know it's interesting, right? But I just find that it's interesting. I had bad experiences on weed when I was a young hippie. So, because back then it was just whatever you got is what you smoked. And it turns out that I can't do sativa. I can only do indica. So, I just got to stay away from it. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with it. It's just not something I think about doing. It truly is. It just doesn't enter into my sort of domain of like, hey, I should do this. So I have to consciously make an effort to smoke up. It's weird, right? You'd think that it would be sort of the secondary attribute.
I only asked because it sounds like quite a sensory experience, the whole painting experience for you. There's a lot of things moving and feeling, and it's emotional by the sounds.
And that's what I was saying about the transition from photography to painting for me was very much about entering into a realm of sensation and experience. Because as a photographer, the way I describe it is when I was working with photo, it was very much above the shoulders, right? It's intellectual, it's visual, it's, you have to think, you have to be aware, because I was very much into process and technology and, rear noble point of the lens kind of mathematics, all of that stuff. So it was very, very much an intellectual pursuit. The ideas, it was conceptually driven, but for me as a painter, nobody told me that painting happens below the waist. I'm just going to say it. It's like one of the best kept secrets of painters. It's like if you're not feeling what you're doing in your senses in that kind of way, then it's like I don't know, it's not as intense as it can be. So when I started painting, I started out with a very kind of trepidatious touch of a pencil on a wall drawing a figure. It was like, and I can remember shaking. Someone that I was incredibly confident in the photo realm, but picking up that pencil and making that decision to draw for the first time in decades, it's like I was literally shaking. And I ended up making this drawing. You start with a point of something and you travel through, and the next thing you know, you've actually drawn something that has a recognition factor. It's a body, it's a person. So that was an incredible thing. And then I started doing the same thing with paint and feeling that liquidity of paint and pushing things around that were wet and moving. It was like, clearly this is sexual for me. Other artists, we have our sort of things that push us towards what we do, and it can be all kinds of factors that enter into there. But for me, it was very much, as a painter, it was process and physical aspects of the materials that I was using. So that ability to sort of manipulate the surface. And when that became that kind of memory of the body and memories of strokes and the pleasure involved in there, and my whole entire domain of thinking as a painter is about that pursuit of pleasure, and pleasure as being like a pleasure seeker. So it's an incredible thing. And I'm starting to find that more and more in the digital works that I'm creating, because I don't have to clean up after myself anymore. I can, it's like if you make a mistake, you just press a thing and it's gone. You fixed it and you can move on. So, and I think that in this thing that I did in particular for the Gazette is that I pushed my understanding of Procreate to a whole different realm. So this is why I'm grateful for these opportunities that come up, because I wouldn't have done that otherwise. Maybe I might have a year from now, but because it was there in front of me and I had that chance to do it, it was incredible. I'm still in love with this piece.
I'm in love with the piece as well. I think I'm in love with all of the pieces from all of the artists up until now, and I'm in love with the ones that are yet to come as well. They all speak to different stories, and it's your story is quite unique. I really have been grateful, and I appreciate the opportunity to write about you and to speak with you and to introduce you to these people, because there's a darker side to crypto and a chaotic side to crypto, and I think you express that through your art and can speak to it in a way that some others perhaps can't. So thank you so much for being here and for creating for us.
Yeah, and I want to say I was so positively surprised to hear how old you are. And I know we shouldn't say for women how old they are, but I was very impressed that at your age you really love and to be part of the NFTs, and you really get it,
Well, I'm glad you think I get it, because I know that I get it.
No, it's not like I think you get it. No, but like maybe I didn't word it right. I didn't mean that you get it like that. I mean, like compared to your peers, that
No, I didn't take that as an insult at all. I mean, I absolutely, there's getting it, and then there's just doing it, and I think a lot of people are just doing it. But this to me is like, it's a 2-year pursuit at this point, and I haven't been out here making bags. It's not my thing, right? I'd love to, but I'd love to, but it's not been happening for me in that kind of way. So, there has to be some other mechanism that drives people. And for me, it's the communities that I've been introduced to, conversations that I see happening. It's the embracing of digital technologies by people who may not have done it otherwise, including my own return to it. I would never have picked up Procreate last summer if I didn't have a focus for it, because at my age, it's like, why would I bother? So, it was driven by a kind of a natural rhythm of arriving where I am with what it is I'm doing, and making physical paintings. I made a few physical Pepe paintings, but for me, he becomes alive in the digital realm. He's glowing from behind, and there's all kinds of stuff that goes on with digital technologies, and I'm here for it. And I'm here for the provenance as well. This is embedded in the blockchain as a history of who I am at this moment in this development of this technology. And I think that my voice is an important one. I think that being almost 70 and having a voice in this conversation is important. It's like my cohort is Haftka. I don't know if you know him, but we're kind of the same mentality towards this thing. And look how rare we are. I'm just going to...
Yeah, you are a rare Pepe, for sure. You're sharp. You are. Even your profile picture at the moment is a Pepe but he's reflected. It's the reverse sort of image of what we would normally see, which is what some people have done with the funks and the other projects where they've taken the mick out of other projects to an extent by flipping them over and calling it something else. But you've done that. You've taken away all of the detail and just left the check. So it's a reference to what's been going on recently. But there's such a simple piece of art, your profile picture, yet there's a lot going on. There's a big story there, and that is what makes it so rare, is you can only see it if you can see it, I think. And you have to come into the Pepe communities to learn about how we operate in a way.
I switched out my profile photo, but yes, the one that you're talking about where it's just the check with the profile, the color of Pepe's lips are the coral, and the color of Pepe is the traditional Pantone color for Pepe. So yeah, there are subtleties in there. I also lifted that check mark directly from Vincent van Gogh. I had a different check mark in there, and then I saw his check mark, and I had to go redo my check mark. And it was in the exact half hour that he minted, I was about to mint mine. And so I had that moment of grace where I could actually take a few things from his, stick it into mine, and then mint mine. But yeah, I mean, the one that's up right now in the freedom to transact, where I took Satoshi and turned him into, I twisted him, distorted him a little, and gave him Pepe's eyes looking out at those Bitcoins.
I was just going to mention that little series as well, the Book of Memes, it is a book of sorts. It's 5 sort of unique covers, similar to what Redline do with their covers. Like now we're turning it into pages, I think, and you're starting to write the book quite incredibly well, I think. And there's another side of that will appear on XCP, I believe, as well.
Yeah, there are the first 5 that I released as part of the fake memes discussion, and then I have 5 that I have geared up to go on XCP. And I'm going to be doing Satoshi as a woman, because Anonymous was a woman, right? There's kind of this throughout art history. If you see something by Anonymous, chances are 9 times out of 10 it is done by a woman who's been ignored by the male dominant canon. So, but you can't use an A.
Funny, because actually you think about, like, if I think about 4chan, I do think about bro culture. I think we are looking at wrapping up not too far into the future, but I just want to mention a few more things before we go, for sure. 4chan definitely is a bit of a boys' club. Crypto is definitely a bit of a boys' club, and we've talked about that as well. And it's quite interesting to think of that anonymous character in the background as being part of a girls' club that exists in a deeper, darker corner of the internet, perhaps, than the boys' club, who are so loud and proud and shilling their projects and doing all these sorts of things. So, continue, please. But it's incredible to think about it like that.
Well, let's not forget the role of women in computing technology and digital technologies, because, they are definitely part of the discovery teams. So, I'm here as representing myself and doing.
And the kids are listening to Ariana Grande singing "God is a Woman," and I think it's all going to work out eventually, we hope.
Well, let's hope so. I mean, I thought I would see bigger changes in my lifetime, and, they haven't all come to fruition. So we just have to see. It's a long, slow process. It took us 2,000 years to get here. It's going to take us another, who knows how long, to get out of it. So, people are people, and we're all beautiful, and we are all worthy. And it's, the gender discussion is a whole other issue for another day.
Yeah, I think I would advise everyone to do their own research on that one and come to their own conclusions. It's a bit of a difficult one to talk about at this point in time.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody has any more questions they want to ask me. Feel free to ask me anything. I'm an open book.
Yeah, I don't see any hands, so it's just me and Fillory. But if anybody wants, just raise your hand, and we'll pass the mic. I just wanted to say, Yeah. It's been great listening about your journey in arts and culture. And uh, if anybody wants a really, really nice piece, they can definitely get a Gazette. And part of the Gazette is the art drop, which for this week is Cirque du Pepe. And for sure, um, i- if if anybody is more interested, definitely follow PE and check out her work because it's really really cool, and there's a lot of wonderful art that you can explore there. Hey, we have Arwin. Hello, sir. How are you?
Welcome up.
What's up?
Arwin was the artist with the Gazette we did at the beginning of the year, week one, 2023.
Yes, Arwen and I have crossed paths many times.
Mm. How's it going, sir? How are you?
Hey, Jim. Yeah, I'm super good. Thanks. Kind of wrapped up in this ordinals thing at the moment. I love a bit of geeking out. Where geek meets art, where you'll find me. So I'm just having a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, it's weird. How does that work, man? Like, did you figure it out?
Yeah, everything is about this. It's funny because what a cycle, huh? Well, when we started in week one, we talked about, in a way, the interconnectedness of everything. And yeah, basically, because of the small community of it, a friend who was part of the Dank Rose Cash Rare Boshi project that I started doing, that kind of just brought a load of random people, not random, but people I didn't know, into my life. And then a couple of those people told me about Ordinals and Casey like a few weeks ago, kind of before this all broke. And I was desperately trying to catch up because it was super hard. It still is. But it kind of just got to market just about the same time as it blew up. And so I've just been sort of contributing, learning. It took us like 2 weeks to run a node and get everything working. But we're up now. We're doing inscriptions. I've got a couple of drops. I'm not here to shill me, actually. I came to ask questions to shout. But yeah.
Well, interestingly enough, Arwen, because, you and I kind of travel in the same circles. So it's been like Mikaboshi and now fake memes and now ordinals. I can't even begin to think about ordinals. Like my last week was
It's hard to keep up with it.
frustration, right? I am just like, what a year this has been so far. It's just like jam-packed. You turn around, there's something else you've got to think about. So I'm going to, at some point, I want to hear about ordinals, not today. So ask me in.
All it means is for me is I got a retweet from Joe Looney. So basically my life is complete. I'm retiring, I think, now from art. Honestly, my life's just like, imagine spending your life making memes to like in social media. It's not like they're right there. And then so I never tag in. I always like tag around. I never mention, don't look him in the eyes. It's like Medusa. But anyway, I got me doing. I come to ask you a question, if that's okay. Well, interested your opinion on it. Was like one of the things I find about myself, and I just get the feeling it might be from you, is you were talking about your art and your process and how important it was to keep it real and stuff like that. And I think that, do you feel that it's like it's not like did you start painting? You said you was painting late in life. Is that because you basically just had to get it out, yeah? And so you're trying to find a release, like your kind of massage. So for me, for example, I just have to do it. I don't think about, oh man, I'm doing art. I definitely didn't start, and then I want to be an artist. And then if only I had something to paint about. I didn't start in that way as a creative, like fascinated by the stylistic production of art. Although I do think that like trade is important, but I sort of found it like I ended up, I just found out that was the only thing I was doing. And I just wondered about how your process of what actually made you, was it your aesthetic desire to be a painter, or was it more like a conceptual, like you have to say stuff?
Wow. Well, I talked about this a little very, very early on in this. So, I'll just kind of fill it in a little bit. But no, I didn't grow up with any kind of art around me. But I can remember so clearly, I might as well tell the story since you're asking. I was 10 years old. In my house, my father ruled. He was a sociopath. It was really a difficult life, and as I said earlier, I grew up in poverty. We had daily delivery of the newspaper. And the paper was delivered, and I used to read everything. I was a voracious reader. Now I understand why, because I think in language. But I was reading the front section of the newspaper and the editorial page. I was on the floor of the kitchen, and I remember so clearly flipping the page over onto the editorial and seeing a drawing by Picasso. And it was an editorial section about the scandal of Picasso at the Art Gallery of Toronto showing erotica. And erotica was simple line drawing with a breast, it was like scandalous in the 1960s. So I very quietly remember, like my father was controlling, very quietly ripped that out of the newspaper, not knowing what it meant to me, not at all. And I folded it up and I hid it in a drawer in my bedroom without, saying anything about it, because something in that spoke to me. That was my first inkling that there was something that spoke to me. And so that echoed throughout my life. So there's kind of a bit of a tragic trigger warning here for people. My mother committed suicide 2 years later. At her funeral, somebody said to me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And this is at a point when girls grew up to be wives, and that was it, So I said, I want to be an artist. And everybody laughed at me and said, no, what are you talking about? You have to get married, And so that was kind of my humiliation entry into the sweepstakes of becoming an artist. So I always knew I wanted it, didn't know what it was. And so when I became a mother myself, that's when I was able to do it. And, as I said earlier, I became a photographer because it was rapid fire and I could get all of these intense ideas out very, very quickly. Painting is something that, this probably, it's like a daily practice. It's a requirement. It becomes something that sort of controls your entire movement through life. If you're painting something, you can't leave it because it needs to be worked while it's wet. Instead, you can't let it dry, or you need to let it dry, so you're literally unable to move forward. It controls you. So you have to be ready to give into it to become that kind of lifetime pursuit of something that pushes back, really, because painting does push.
I would go as far as to say you guys have brought that out in me as a curator. Like I've started off like talking about it and commentating about art because I wanted to be involved in the community. I saw what's happening. I was like, man, these seem like cool people. I want to relate to them. And now I'm starting to create art. And it's not because I thought I was going to be an artist either. It just sort of like, it feels like the right thing to do. And I feel like now I can speak through my art. And I think you speak through your art, Owen, and so do you, PE.
I hope that answered your question, Arwen. It was kind of a long and involved answer.
No, it did. It's fascinating, especially like different kinds of artists, as Laurie just said, but obviously we all see different stuff. And I've noticed overall, sort of spending time together, we see like those perhaps different, more obscure, older things, perhaps than other people with our conversations about with Michael and what you said about Walter Benjamin. It's like why we do, like I see memeing, if we want to call it, or art as like a critical sort of analysis of whatever's going on in my mind. I just wonder if you kind of bit to say about why you did those Walter Benjamin pieces, how you know who he is, and why you think that's relevant in meme culture. Thank you.
Wow. Well, I'm new to memes because I didn't understand quite what they were. And then this whole awooga thing came up and I'm like, well, I know what that means. So it's like culturally dependent. Your social culture is what informs your understanding of memes. I mean, I know memes on a whole other kind of level because, philosophy doctorate and all of that stuff. So Benjamin, the meme that I did of Walter Benjamin, because he talks about the aura and he talks about there is no aura in technological reproduction. No, the aura is lost. So I had to make a card with little fake aura surrounding Walter Benjamin and give him his fake aura statement about, fake art in the fake aura in the state of its own technological reproduction or something. I can't remember exactly right now what it was that I wrote. But I think that there's a whole school of philosophy and of philosophers who talked about mimesis and about the reproduction of an idea and the seed of an idea and where that takes. So I guess I was just ready for it and it made sense to me. And Benjamin was the last of the 5 that I did for the fake meme. That kind of push towards memes. And what you have to do with memes, this is what I discovered, is you got to be on top of it. You got to do it in the now. It's very much a representation of our culture in this moment as it is actually going in front of our eyes rapid fire. And you have to be able to do it quickly. And I think NFTs are the perfect way for that to be recorded as symbols for the future. And I think that this is a really important thing that we do with NFTs, is that we inscribe the current state of symbolic gesture in our cultures and say, you know what? Nobody's gonna be able to say that this didn't happen, or that this woman or this man or this person didn't actually do this in this time, because it's inscribed on the blockchain. We know exactly when it happened now. There's no longer a question of history and who gets to write it. If you're present, if you're here, you're writing history.
That's so right. And people don't realize how sensitive and not sure history is, even in the most recent of times. So at least we have got like a concrete reference now. And actually, I was thinking about what you said about hermetics. I'm going to show up because I think did a bit, but like kind of reminds me of, with philosophy as well, like Walter Benjamin is a bit like Nietzsche. I don't want to make like weird links, but just the both is that they both seem quite sickly people.
Yeah.
Don't like to see other people having a good time. And it is a bit in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, yeah. And I'm paraphrasing, but it's about the physicists. Is when they invent the quantum multiple probability drive, and some scientists were really annoyed about it. Mostly because they hadn't thought of it themselves, but secondly because they didn't get invited to those kind of parties. And I just wonder if that's somehow like, sometimes people have good ideas and like base them in different ways, but I've seen different archetypes of artists, especially like psychology and critics and stuff. They have their own set of opinions that you can almost tell what they're going to be by looking at them. I know that's weird, but hey, that's a meme in itself.
Well, there definitely are personalities, and as somebody, I did my philosophy doctorate in Switzerland at European Graduate School, which is a very exclusive kind of boot camp for philosophers, and all of the contemporary living philosophers are our cohort. Like, we're peers together in the Swiss Alps, having these conversations about ideas and what they're currently working on. So, Zizek and Derrida was also one of the initial members of this community, Baudrillard. All of these are the people that we lived and worked with, and spent our time with in these intense boot camps that we would be in. So you get to actually meet these people. And there's some, and I don't want to mention by name, but there are some that are just absolutely, completely, you wouldn't believe who they are until you spend time with them. And then you look at everything they've written and you've gone, what a disconnect between who you are and what you've written here. Now I can never read what you've written again without understanding that this is not really, it's like just not the thing. So
Everything is fake.
let me tell you about Paul Virilio, who's the exact opposite. Paul Virilio is this philosopher who's written about speed and all kinds of like acceleration. And I was fortunate to spend 3 days with him in La Rochelle in France, at a seminar where we talked about all kinds of, because he's French speaking. I also I can understand French better than I can speak it at this point in my life. But, there were subtleties in what he was saying and the character that he is. And I had this expectation, because of what I had read about him, that he was this devout Christian. And, I figured he would be like this really uptight kind of guy. And instead he was like Santa Claus. He was just a delight. And he had so much joy in what he was talking about. And it didn't matter that he had this kind of, religious direction in his own life, because his philosophy was something that was included in all of that. And he was joyous. He was funny. He was a little bit rude and vulgar and dirty. And just like, he was just this incredible person. And so when I got to reread his writings with an understanding of who he was as a human being, what a difference it makes. So yeah, I think that you can tell a lot by spending time with somebody, for sure.
That's mega interesting, that. My mind boggles. And I agree with you. It's crazy. XCP's a bit like that, isn't it? I think. It's like we'll look back on it. And if people can be more free, and it's like you can't lie. It's like you build up this, you can lie, but you get uncovered as we see these things happening. But like, it's fascinating. Fascinating group, because it's your art and it's daily. We're doing dailies basically as journalists a lot of the time, and we don't have a boss. So we're just like doing our own dailies. And it's like sometimes you want to sell them, sometimes you don't even give a shit. You're just doing them and no one can stop you. But once there's a pattern, I was just talking with some Bitcoin maxis about this ordinal day. I'm not going to talk about it, but you can,
that's
yeah, but you can see that the XCP thing has value because they're all like, yeah, we want decentralized trust. And I'm like, yeah, we have decentralized trust in this group. I can look in this group and see people that I know and trust. And but I said it last time, I'll say it again. Crypto, Bitcoin, whatever, is here to complement that trust, but you can't beat. I know you. So unless they get AI to change your speech patterns and everything, I know they can do that. But for today, it's like I know who my friends are, and we use Bitcoin as a technology amongst our different communities. That's what I love. So it's working.
Yo, can you hear me?
yeah, and
I got rugged from my own space. It happens every week. I'm back though.
okay.
I want to look there and
Back to that.
say, I'll let you just respond to it out in a sec. I wanted to respond to it as well. I was going to say it is incredible that like we are really becoming friends. That's what is most important, and we find out who we can or can't trust. And the XCP community is about that. I don't want us to shill the XCP and Bitcoin too hard because we came here to speak about Edie and her art and her as an artist. And I love the conversation between you guys because you guys are two of my best friends in this space, I would say. So,
Well, that's really nice of you to say. But XCP is an essential part of me. And I see Helen is in the audience. Who is it? Because, this is who brought me into XCP, and I'm forever grateful. And we skirted over this issue earlier about, the discomfort I was feeling with the centralized aspect of Ethereum and how decentralization and freedoms of all kinds are embedded in NFTs that are built on Bitcoin and XCP cultures. And I'm so grateful to be part of this. It's opened up so much of me. And, in a pandemic where, I'm high risk and I was really intensely hermetic, as I said, and I was at home, right? I wasn't doing anything external. I wasn't going food shopping. I had somebody who was doing that. I was at home. And so when I had those initial conversations about XCP, and I found out more because none of us as artists knew about, NFTs on Bitcoin. It was all being discussed about Ethereum. So when I found out about all of this stuff, everything fell into place for me. All of my longings for what I had hoped crypto cultures could be for me. Other people have different realities and they want different things, but for me, that was what I was pursuing. And so the freedom to actually perform on my own merits rather than, having to be liked by people and being given a foot up by somebody, it was different. It's different. Look, there's truly like a chain, right? There's a chain of a community. It's not just the blockchain that exists over there. There's a chain of.
It's almost like a
chain of communication. Yeah, it's different, and I'm so grateful for that.
I saw someone reference the outer. I think there was a show on in London recently. It was something about the outer net, and it looks incredible. If you're in London, then you should go along and check it out. I can't remember exactly where it was, but it's like here at outer net or something like that, and it's like this global community is blockchain together in a way. And I want to say thank you, like to you, P, and to Owen. And I know you guys are on a similar timeline. It's like 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening. For me, it's like 11 a.m. the next day, and for Redline, it's just gone past midnight, so he's probably a little bit tired, but we're all like connecting our blockchain from different parts of the world at the moment, and it is incredible to be a part of it with you guys.
Yeah, man. And you know what? I actually want everybody to join XCP as well. And I love you all. Let's community first. That's what we do. But like, hey, I'll be happy when Red Lion is issuing on XCP and on Ordinals and on Ethereum. Why not? Like, why not have both? But like, exactly, we can double mint.
Definitely.
For Providence.
Let's get people to single mint first.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Then they will double mint.
Yeah, I don't feel. I'm joking. Come on.
I know it's a good topic.
Hello, Helen.
Good evening,
Hello.
guys. How are you? And of course, P.
Chain agnostic. Find me where you find me.
Exactly. Well, I think that's a really important thing now is to be totally agnostic. Learn, listen, and absorb. Like, don't go, I've come from sitting with my husband since 20 16 on Bitcoin, and it was all about Bitcoin when I joined, and it was, hanging around in those Bitcoin maxi clubhouse rooms and listening. And it's I love the whole idea of decentralization. However, there's a lot of people and a lot of eyes on Ethereum and things like Tia and Manifold. I've learned so much by learning those chains. However, when P came to Bitcoin, it isn't easy. And the great thing about Bitcoin is we kind of seed out the chaff quite early on, because you have to roll up your sleeves and you have to learn, So a lot of people don't want to do that. So when we've got our army over there, but they're all kind of really into it and really willing to understand what Bitcoin and the methodology behind it entails, which is interesting, because you have kind of top level chats as opposed to kind of very broad chats, which I find I have a lot of in other rooms.
You've done a wonderful job of explaining this in a soon to be released art drop also. Who is it, haven't you?
Yeah, I'd love to hear about it.
Who is our next week's guest, by the way, Redline?
Have you got...
Oh, no, very nice to meet you from now.
Nice to meet you.
It's an early chat.
Have you talked about your piece, P?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Can you tell me while I'm here?
It is all recorded, so we will be able to qualify it.
How the tolerances of the co-hosts, because we've been here now for close to an hour.
Oh, we aren't in a rush. Go ahead and explain her.
Okay, so I'm also keeping in mind Laurie's birthday, so maybe he has other plans. But anyway,
I'm cool. As long as you guys want to talk, I'm here to talk.
I don't know if I can really repeat exactly what I was saying earlier, but basically I view Pepe as being the ringmaster. He's the one who has introduced me to this wonderful circus that's going on with memes and all kinds of different acts that happen, fake rares, everything that has been happening in the Bitcoin realm now that I'm back, because I had to take a 6-month leave of absence from pretty much everything. So when I came back to it and all of these things were going on, and now you add ordinals into it and you add the various characters that are in here, some of them are shady, some of them are bright, there's this entire kind of narrative that exists ready to be developed into this sort of playground of interactions between these characters and how they're going to play things out. And also, one of the big problems for me, of course, is that Bitcoin and XCP don't really have a place for NSFW work to happen. So that's kind of held me back a little bit. So now I feel that I have my own determination with this circus tent where all kinds of things can begin to unfold and take place, and people are welcome to enter into the tent. They know that they have to pay the price of admission if they want to see what's in that tent. So, this is affording me a possibility to develop even further in my philosophy of what is inscribed on the blockchain, who's writing it, what will be there in history. Is it going to be, these kinds of one level of memes? Is it going to be something that goes into the technology of the blockchain itself, the way ordinals have? This is truly NFT art, right? When you think about ordinals, the little that I know of it seems to be actually addressing what is NFT art, who is an NFT artist, because now the NFT itself is actually the thing. It's no longer the transaction hash and the embedding of a JPEG onto that, and being able to change all of those things out on the different blockchains. So it's a grounding for me of my aesthetics, my development as an artist, my ideas. All of that now has an opportunity to flourish under this one general tent of Pepe as the ringmaster, introducing the acts and the various assistants and the things that happen in that kind of, not a Barnum and Bailey circus, but the Cirque du Soleil atmosphere, where it's really about the bodies of the players and the acts that they perform. So I don't know if that answers your question. Maybe in tandem with what I said earlier, if you listen to the recording, it'll begin to make sense. But also the palette that I developed with this. It's a very rich red, golden, intense colors. And that's unusual for me. It started with the Renaissance stuff that I was doing in the fall when I was just moving back into a smaller studio and starting to paint again, the redness of things. And then Mikaboshi came along and that was red. And now I've got this red and gold circus tent with the ringmaster with his red outfit. So there's kind of this bloodline, I think, that's going to happen of me as an artist and what I've developed in my lifetime, solidifying that under this general tent. So I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely. And before I forget, many congratulations on the wedding and happy birthday. See.
Thank you.
Yes.
You know all the insider news, huh?
My son just got married this week, so that was a big deal for me. And, the bride is gloriously 8 months pregnant, so I'm going to be a grandmother in a month. So it's just like a wonderful, what a time. And to have this in the midst of it all, to have this opportunity to make this kind of narrative structure of Pepe as the ringmaster. Isn't he delightful?
Isn't she?
He really and truly, look at his...
I know, but aren't you going to be the coolest nanny? I mean, my nanny makes Pepe's. What does your nanny do?
Well,
She does it to protect our freedom.
Oh my God, there you just hit it on the nail on the head. Yes. And I don't know, maybe there'll be a little generational wealth, but it won't be in my time. Maybe my grandchildren will benefit from the efforts I make now. We'll see.
It's incredible. And to think about all the colors that are going into it, like you're talking about, and like I guess we'll probably see some sacred purples, some royal purples appearing in the circus in future, I'd imagine too. You mentioned how Mikaboshi has brought the red in, but I think, who was it you said that you need to be agnostic, and I think, of course, we do when it comes to technology, but I also like to believe that when it comes to myths and legends and storytelling, I'm very much Gnostic, which is the complete opposite, and it all sort of, it should be what it will be, I think.
Well, it has to be true to me as an artist in the end, and my truth as an artist relative to the blockchains is that they do represent different cultures. And, as I say, the culture for me that is grounding is XCP and Bitcoin and the community that I've met through that. And Tezos will always be the artist's playground where, under-recognized, underpaid, but incredible ideas take place. And then Ethereum is a marketplace. It's just like an art gallery where you're going in to do wheeling and dealing and making things happen in a different kind of way. My book of memes is listed there for a very good reason. The provenance of my early works are listed there for a very good reason. So, we have to choose the things that we choose for the way it works for us. And it's a very important lesson in blockchain technology. You don't come into a conversation and say, what is the best blockchain for me to mint on? You have to know something about what it is you're trying to achieve in order to choose that blockchain.
Yeah, definitely. I think the ETH, Tez, and XCP are probably my 3 top chains. I used to have them in my Twitter bio or Twitter title, but I took them out because I think it looks cooler if you just have your name and none of this, like this dot something at this point. I think we're, I don't know, it works for some, whatever, worked for me for a while. But those 3 chains, like you say, Tez has got some incredible artists. I've collected a little bit on there, and I've collected probably a bit more on ETH and a bit less on XCP because it's that difficulty of getting into it, getting your money into Bitcoin, getting your Bitcoin across to a free wallet, and then learning how to actually transact with the people. But like Arwen is doing some cool stuff where he's creating dexes where you can trade anything for anything basically, and it's pretty interesting to see what might become of XCP in the future as well.
It's so much easier for me as a Canadian to deal with Bitcoin than it is for me to deal with any of it. Like Tezos was impossible. Somebody had to donate Tezos to me because we're so highly regulated as a banking culture. So, and MetaMask, and, you had to do one wallet to get into another wallet. They finally had fixed that. So, it's just like, I had to learn my vocabularies. And I think that, you have your sort of language that you speak first, and then you have your second language, ESL. For me, it was like arriving at Bitcoin with the language that made sense for me. Doesn't mean I'm good at it yet, but it makes sense for me. And
shout out, man. Shout out Jamie, the Robot Love Coffee.
Exactly. And, Helen and Indelible and all of the people who assisted me in getting to where I am with my understanding of that vocabulary. Very important stuff.
What was it? Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Absolutely. Just hit the nail on the head.
All right, I think that's it for this week. We're gonna wrap it up, Laurie.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming together yet again for a space that might not have so many people in it, but I believe has a lot of alpha. So, yeah.
It gets millions of views when we upload it on YouTube, so it's all good. Thanks everyone for listening live here with us. Thank you, PE, for joining us. Everybody who's listening at home. The Gazette cover is incredible. The first video game cover magazine ever. An incredible Cirque du Pep just for you, just for 25 buckaroos. We have tomorrow another interesting interview with Mission Harriman, and on Saturday we have an interview of the team, Dudley and I. Then we will be chatting Red Lion. I would like to thank you all for coming in with us. Have a wonderful day, evening, night, morning, wherever you are. Bye-bye.
And thank
Before you go,
thank you everybody for the opportunity for today and for letting me talk at length about what I do.
yeah, thank you very much, PE, for being with us. And I do want to also mention before we go that PE actually had something else, an in real life exhibition that she turned down in order to take up the opportunity with Red Lion, and we will be forever grateful for that. Like, we're planting seeds on the blockchain right now, and this is one of many. So thank you so much for contributing and collaborating with us. And I guess I can play us a little tune to see us out. At the start, we had Fat Freddy's Drop, which PE requested, and it was A Wandering Eye. And I believe you do have A Wandering Eye, PE, so it was a good song. For you, I'm going to pick this one for me just because we didn't have anything else prepared, but it's Mathematics by Mos Def. And I do love a bit of maths. I think philosophers all do. And us on Bitcoin, we believe in the numerology to some degree too. So thank you very much, everybody.